Hello everyone, welcome to the stream. Thanks for joining me today on this Sunday. It's a very nice day outside today, at least in Massachusetts it is. I see we have some people in the chat. Teak, hi, thanks for joining. Matrix Tech and DJ Photos from Florida. Glad you guys are here. Last time I had a bit of a technical difficulty at the beginning of the stream, so let me just type here and say I'm online. Just let me know if you can actually see me and hear me now. So yeah, just want to make sure I'm actually streaming. Last week I was talking for about 5 minutes or so and people said I wasn't online, so trying to make sure I'm actually online now. So for those of you who are returning, thanks for coming back. And for those of you who it's your first time, typically what I do is I will kind of go over some type of main topic for maybe 20 minutes or half an hour or so. And then I'll go over like questions and answers I got on videos throughout the week. Hi IH. Teak says, yep, okay, so I think you guys are seeing me, so I'm going to assume things are going according to plan. Hi, Hector. So yeah, I think next week my topic, I've made some videos on Canva recently, and I think next week my topic will be an introduction to Affinity Designer for Canva users, because I know a lot of people have been using Canva and kind of want to learn more about Affinity Designer, because especially with the announcement that Canva bought Affinity products, the whole company. So next week I'll probably be doing the live stream, kind of a more introduction to Affinity Designer from the perspective of someone that's kind of used Canva. So some of you guys who have a lot of experience with it, you might, it might be common knowledge to you. So I'll put that warning out there just so you don't feel like you're getting too basic information. But I do kind of want to give a more introductory talk next week about Affinity Designer. And if that goes well, maybe I'll do one for Affinity Photo too. So that's just kind of a preview of what's coming up down the line. So today our topic is gradient maps, and I've talked about this in a couple videos in various places. I have one video that is dedicated to gradient maps, and also in the adjustment layer, kind of big huge video I made, there's a topic talking about gradient maps. So let's, I guess, jump into that subject and see what it's about. So I just created an image. I didn't create this image, I got this image here. And just to kind of show you right off the bat, like what is a gradient map. It's not going to look very useful at first, but we're going to kind of go and talk about it as we progress, and hopefully it'll be more useful. Hi, Brian from Cambridgeshire, UK, Cambridgeshire, UK. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that right. We have a Cambridge here in Massachusetts. That's how I pronounce it here, Cambridgeshire. Not sure how you pronounce that, but thanks for joining. So I just have an image here. And the way you add a gradient map is it's an adjustment layer. So that's one of these options down here. And something I forgot to do. Hi, MTM. I forgot to turn on my zoom tool. All right, so now I think it's working. So if I do Control-1, yeah, okay. So gradient map is an adjustment accessible in this button. So these are going to be your adjustment options down here. So I'll click that. And one of these is gradient map. So we have a gradient map here. So I'll click that. And by default, it does like this crazy color and nothing really useful. So we're going to talk about how to use this more. The default values it gives you are, for the most part, meaningless, I think, but it kind of helps you see what's going on, which we'll talk about. So let me close this. Hi, Julie. So let's first just talk about like, what is a gradient. So we know we have some different types of gradients in the Affinity programs, and all graphics design tools have different types of gradients. And one of the most basic ones is a linear gradient. So it just goes left to right. And the thing about a gradient like this is it really does follow a direction. So like literally here, you're seeing this gradient goes from the left side to the right side. And let's say I wanted to like recolor this image using the gradients or something like that. Well, what I could do is I could take the gradient and I could put it over my image. And I have the gradient here, but I could select some type of blend mode for it. So let's zoom in here. I could play with the various blend modes, maybe one of the light ones, like the soft light, the hard light, vivid light. But kind of you see what's happening is that really it's just taking the color values and it's just like putting them above our image in the same position that they were in the original gradient. So the blue is on the left. I'll choose linear light just so you can see it. And I'll turn down this. So it's like, okay, we did some recoloring of our image here. Maybe it looks kind of cool for something, I don't know. But like we have the blue on the left, the pink in the middle, and the orange on the right, which just follows our gradient. But what if we wanted like a more sophisticated way of mapping colors into our image? For example, what if we wanted to map it based on the values of where those we wanted to take the colors and match them to particular light parts of our image or dark parts of our image. And that's exactly what a gradient map does. It maps our colors to different values in the image. And when I say values, I don't know if it's kind of more of this kind of a term they use in art to describe lights and darks. So just values means the light parts of your image, the dark parts of your image. That's what I mean by values. So enough talking about that. Let me show you an example. Hi, Segmentera. So let me take this apart here. Well, I added the gradient map already onto it. So for this one, so I applied a gradient map to this image. And what it actually does is from left to right, and I kind of have the little cheat sheet over here. What it's basically going to do is it's going to take the blues and it's going to put those into the dark areas in our image here. Then it's going to take the pinks and it's going to put those into the middle grays. And then it's going to take the oranges and put that into the bright areas. So that's how I defined this gradient map here. And you can see that's what's happening. So if I kind of go back and if I toggle this on and off. So notice how the black part of our image, this would be the black part down here. Like her pants are very black. So what's going to happen is above the black, we're mapping the blue into that area. So when I turn this back on, I guess it's more like, it's kind of a, not pure black, but it's kind of in this dark purple area. So that is going there. The bright part of our image was this area over here. So that's getting mapped to this value over there. So you can see we have the white, that's kind of this area. So you're getting that orange. I put some arrows I didn't move these arrows. So kind of like this is what's happening. So if I toggle on and off. So yeah, so you'll see the pink, kind of that middle mid-tone is getting mapped to these areas here. And that's essentially what the gradient map is doing. Now, let me kind of manually create it and show you how I did that. So let's delete this. So by default, like I said, when you create a gradient map, it's going to give you these kind of not really useful colors. But what we can do is you can actually change it just like you can a normal linear gradient. So with this red, I'll make it the blue. So I'll just select blue over here. That's how I built that. With the green, I can change that gradient. I can change that value. So I'll change it to like purple, or I guess this is more magenta-ish here. And then on the top end, this blue, I'll change it to orange, like that. And that's how that mapping there is happening. Now, one of the key things about gradient maps is that by default, just using the normal blend mode, they're not really going to do that much for you. There may be some use cases, but typically what you want to do is change the blend mode of the gradient map, okay? So let me show you how to do that. Just trying to see the best way to show it. Yeah, I'll just do this color here. So when you have the gradient map applied, you can see the blend mode is normal. So it's literally just taking the colors and mapping them to parts of our image here. But we can actually change the blend mode here. So instead of normal, I'll do something like soft light. So I made the soft light blend mode. And now you can see what's happening is it's still applying that gradient map to our image, but it's using a different blend mode to actually make it look a little bit better. Let me get rid of the green arrows. And this is kind of the concept behind a lot of these filters you use, like in these photo apps and stuff like that. A lot of times they're just using a gradient map, maybe with some other adjustments too, to make your image kind of look cool, make it look like it was taken with a certain filter or a certain photograph, or it's a very common way to make images look kind of vintage or something like that. If you want to add like a tinge to it to make it look like it came from like the 70s or 80s or something like that. So let's see here. Let me show you another example here. Let's do a black and white example, just in case you didn't get it. Let's open here. just once. So kind of to do a more black and white example to show you. Now this is a color photo. I was going to do the black and white offline, but I thought I'd do the black and white here just to kind of show you how to make an image black and white. So as I've said before, there's a black and white filter, but sometimes that doesn't work too well. So I'll go to HSL, and I'll just dial down the saturation here. And we have a black and white photo. Now, one thing we can do to make it look a little bit better is I can adjust the levels on it. So I'll go to an adjustment. And I won't go too much detail about how this works. If you want to know more about levels, I think I did a live stream either last week or a couple weeks ago about how the levels work. But here we can see we're not getting any pure black in this image. And we're not getting any pure white. So I'll just drag the black level up. That gives us some more dark there. And I'll drag the white over. And now we have some pure white in this image. So now what I can do is if I apply the gradient map, actually I'll just rasterize this so we only have one thing to worry about. And what I'll do is if I apply the gradient map, let's see, gradient map. Now again, this isn't the prettiest image, but you should kind of understand like what's happening here. Like, why is this red over here? Well, if I turn off the gradient map, you would expect this to be black, right? So the red parts are going to be black. So let's turn off the gradient map. And in fact, you can see that's exactly what's happening. Now, I predict this background area. It looks kind of like a middle gray. If I turn the gradient map on, it's probably going to be green. So let's see if that happens. Yeah, it's green. So this is all that middle area. And then the bright area, blue, this should be white. If I turn the gradient map off, we should see white in this blue area. So yeah, that's that. Hi, Esther. Sure, feel free to ask some questions. Always open to questions. So that's, again, just kind of reinforcing conceptually what's happening. Now, like I said, the real power of gradient maps comes when we combine it with some type of blend mode. So let me show you an example of this. Where's my good image here? Now here's an example of just a city or something like that. Maybe we want to make it, maybe it looks a little boring. Maybe we want to add a better, change the lighting to it or change it to make it have a different type of feel to it. Well, I'll add a gradient map. And one of the most common ones I do for sometimes for things like this is I just do a simple blue and orange gradient map. So a lot of times I'll just delete the middle point. So I'll delete that. And I'll just reverse it. So these are the common gradient controls. So I'll reverse. So we have blue being the normal one, blue being the dark one, and red being the bright area. So Esther, you have a question about logo design? So sure, if you can ask that like after the gradient map part during the Q&A, I'll get into that topic. So I'll do questions about other stuff after the gradient map talk, and then but if you have a question about gradient maps, you can ask that now and I'll ask it. But just remind me during the Q&A and I'll answer your logo design question. So I think blue, a good color that matches with blue, I think is orange. So I'll choose orange. I'll just kind of do that. It doesn't have to be exact. And like I said, we want to change the blend mode. So instead of this blend mode normal, I think soft light is often a good one. These other ones, you can kind of play with them. You can turn down the opacity. Let's do soft light. So I'll close it. And then I'll toggle on and off. So this is before, after, before, after. And you can see you can get lots of like different effects here. And one of the things about Affinity Photo has this, but the other Affinity Designer and Affinity Publisher, as far as I know, don't have it, is they have presets for the adjustments. And so if you have the adjustment here, that's accessible through Window Adjustment. And if I go here, there's all these different like presets for them. Like you can actually just load an adjustment with a preset configuration, and you can save them also. And you can't do that with Affinity Designer for some reason. I don't know why. But I clicked the wrong one. So the gradient map ones, we have some presets for the gradient maps here. Actually, we have some I created in the past. But some of these ones, ultraviolet and nuclear are like some of the default ones. So if we do nuclear, like that's a pretty powerful gradient map. And, again, we would change the blend mode to maybe soft light. So I kind of like that effect. It looks very much like an old photo or something, like it's been kind of sitting in a drawer for a while. So if you had like a new photo and you kind of wanted to make it a little bit grungy, I'd probably start with a gradient map and do that type of effect. And you can turn down the opacity of it also, so it kind of isn't as strongly there. So this is before, after. So before, after. So we've kind of turned a image where the colors are very kind of cool. It's kind of a colder image, and we've warmed it up with a gradient map. And this is the gradient map here. And like I said, you can add more points on here if you like. You can kind of move the points around to get different effects. It has all those gradient options. So let me show you another example of gradient maps. So one thing you can do is you can actually kind of do a style transfer from one photo to another. And you can see we have this image on the left. It's kind of more sunsetty, or kind of that golden hour of the day, I guess you would say, more browns and all that kind of stuff. What if we want to apply these colors to our image over here on the right? Maybe we just want to experiment and see how it works. So let's do that. We can use a gradient map for that. So I want to add a gradient map to this ocean image over here. So what I'll do is I'll add a gradient map to it. So I'll go to Adjustments, Gradient Map. And as per usual, we get our kind of nonsense colors here. But what we can do now is, for the red, we can pick one of our shadow colors over here. And this doesn't have to be really exact. You can just kind of look and kind of have fun with which ones you want to choose. So let's choose, one of these darker brown colors. Let's see how that looks. So that's that. In the middle, let's see. Let's choose maybe one of the greens. And on the bright one, let's choose one of the brighter colors. On that. Actually, I think for the middle one, maybe. I want something a little more saturated for that middle one. Again, this is just kind of a starting point. We can go to other stuff later. Christina, reading your comment. You said my video's been helpful and to the point. Thanks. I'm happy that's been helping you. So now what I can do is I can actually change the blend mode. So let's go to soft light. And here we have kind of a different effect. So let's toggle before and after. So this is, let me go in here. So before, after, before, after. So you can see I kind of like this I kind of like the effect we had with this gradient map. It just looks a little bit different. It looks a little, I don't know, just a little more expressive, a little more interesting, a little more non-generic, I think. Bob, reading your question. So what would be some good use cases for the gradient map adjustment layer? Yeah, so I think something like right here, like I'm showing you, like if you wanted to experiment with adding a different kind of feel to the color scheme, you can try taking something from one image and giving it to another. So right here, what I did is I took the colors from this image on the left and I just applied it to a gradient map on the right. So you can see these colors I got came from here. And there's nothing, you don't have to be scientific or precise about which colors you choose here. You can just like pick ones that you like and experiment with it and see what looks interesting. So this top one here, I could change it. I think you see it in real time. Yeah, you see it in real time, like how it affects. And let's see. Bernard, reading your question. So you're looking for the difference between the gradient map tool on the left and the gradient map. Yeah, so the gradient map is going to, the reason it's called a map is because it translates the colors in the gradient to levels of light and dark. So remember what I said earlier, if I had just a gradient here, let's do this. Let's just create a rectangle. Where's the normal rectangle? I'm blind today. Let's just do this. So if I bring this to the front, oh, there's my normal rectangle. All right. So let me make a normal gradient here. So let's go to the gradient map. So let's make this a gradient. So I'll make this a gradient here. And let's just make it look like this other thing down here. It's close enough. That. And I'll make this point 1 in the middle. And I'll make this point the 1 on the right. So what I could do, and let's copy this. So this one here is top one is our gradient map. And I'll organize this so it shows on the screen when I'm done. Just trying to get it organized here. This one here is just our normal gradient. And what I'll do is I'll just put the gradient over it. And I'll do the same blend mode as I did before. I'll do soft light. Now, the difference between these two images, I'll just say this is gradient. They're both kind of based on, they're based on a similar gradient. But the difference is how they're being mapped, okay? All right. I think this shows what I want to show you guys. So what's happening with the gradient map is that the gradient map it's taking our gradients and it's mapping it to based on the lights and darks. So this brown part here is putting it into the dark areas, and I used the soft light adjustment, so it's not literally that color. Although I could make it literally that color. Let's do that. There we go. So what it's doing is it's taking this brown here and it's putting it into the darker areas. It's mapping this color to the darker parts of our image here. Now this gradient here, when I put it back to normal, is literally just going left to right over our image. So it's not really making any kind of decision about where to put the color other than just like where it appears on the gradient itself, like positionally. Whereas the gradient map is actually taking the color and mapping it based on the values from left to right. So what it's doing is it's kind of, let's make this black and white here. Why is that happening? So if that's that. So it's mapping these guys like that. So you're saying if you only want, so Bob, reading your question, if you only want to change one end of the spectrum, let's say the light end. Yeah, so what you should be able to do is with the gradient map, I believe I could delete this and I could make this one transparent. Let's make this like something extreme. Yeah, so let's make that transparent. I guess let's make it like white also. I don't know. Let me make this red just so it shows up. And let's see. Am I doing the right one? So if I delete this, this should be making it, let's see. Okay, there's that. Oh, so that's the whole thing. So if I do just this one, there should be a way I can make one end of it transparent, but maybe not. Yeah, this is the whole thing. But if I just want to make this point transparent, I don't know if that's possible. I guess if I click this, no, it's always gonna be noise. Yeah, I'm not sure if it's possible to adjust just one end. I'll have to look into that some more. I thought you could actually make part of it transparent because you can do that with a normal gradient, of course. So with a normal gradient, you know, you can take one end and you have this transparency or, yeah, the opacity per, you can do that with a normal gradient. But I think with a gradient map, I think you have to actually have values for everything. So there might be a more sophisticated way to actually do that, but I'll have to look into that. So Mikhail, reading your question. So you know Adobe Photoshop and Illustrator? Yeah, so you're saying it doesn't matter how good your PC is, Adobe does not work. Yeah, some of the newer ones have quite high performance specs, so it can make things slow down a little bit. So yeah, definitely. I've had pretty good luck with the Affinity programs. They seem to run on most of my systems. I have an ancient Mac OS laptop over here, and I say ancient, it's like 2016, so it still runs the Affinity. It's slow to start up, but they run well once they're started. So Bernard, reading your question. Yeah, so you're saying it's about the interaction between the colors. Yes, so it's going to be about mapping, the colors, but also just like the lights and the darks. So as I showed on this other one, I think this one with the cat. Do I still have that up? That was Affinity Photo, right? Where's my cat? Yeah, I think this is the one. If you understand this example here of what it's doing, like if you see how this is actually going, the dark part of the cat, like this black here, is going to get the reddish part. And then the white part of the cat is going to get the blue part up here because that's the lighter part. And then the green part is going to be this middle tone there. So this is kind of the mapping part. This is the keyword of map. It's taking the colors and it's mapping them into the values there. So that's how that works. So these are kind of the main examples I wanted to show you. These examples of, you can change the lighting here. You can do this type of style transfer, which I butchered my original example here to show that example. But, the thing you can do is, do I still have it? I didn't do it. So like I said, I could take this here and I could add this there, and I could actually I could select colors from this reference image over here. And it's just kind of a way of selecting colors from something to kind of get some ideas of how you want to stylize your other image. And like I said, you can just kind of pick things that are fun. You don't have to do a scientific approach to like what's the best color to choose from. Just kind of like find something nice, good saturation. And then you can play with the blend modes. Soft light is usually pretty good. And there we have an example of some type of style transfer. So before, after, before, and after. So after reading your question, you're not using Illustrator, but you want an Adobe Illustrator file. Is it possible in any way? Yeah, I know these can read Adobe Illustrator files. I'm not sure if they can save as Adobe Illustrator files. File, export. I guess they don't have the ability to export as an Adobe Illustrator file, but they can read them pretty well. So yeah, you might need to use Adobe Illustrator to actually create them. But if you download an Adobe Illustrator file, typically I have pretty good luck reading the basic information in these things. So you'll get the basic SVGs and all that kind of stuff. But some of the more advanced features in the Adobe products, they're not going to show up when you load an Adobe Illustrator file into Affinity Designer or something. Hi, Nikki. No problem being late. Hope you got the cleaning done. Mikhail, yeah. You're saying you think if Affinity adds AI, they don't have a monthly subscription. Yeah, we'll see. I mean, it depends how the AI is implemented. If it's running off a server, then maybe they'll add some type of subscription. If it's something that runs locally, maybe not. So yeah, my leg's cramping a little bit here. Had a hard workout this morning. So that was kind of the main things I wanted to say about the gradient map. Essentially, it's a good way of just adding some color style to your images. And I kind of want to talk about a related topic, which I didn't put on my slide here. I wanted to. And that's something called LUTs. And that's another kind of stylized tool that it's another adjustment layer here. And if we go to, let me show a good example here. It's an adjustment layer. So if you click this and you go to LUTs, you may have seen this before. And I didn't create a slide for this. I wanted to. I forgot. Let me just create something here. So you kind of know what I'm talking about. I don't like to talk about things that without words that kind of can help you guys remember it. So LUTs. So a LUT stands for look up tables. Okay. And this is a very common thing in like all sorts of video programs and graphics editors. So it's not unique to Affinity Photo by any means, but really it's kind of a common way of exporting the graphical settings for your photos and videos. And the best way is to just show you an example. So I'll do that. Hi, Fuhrer. Nice to see you. Nikki, you're saying you don't want AI in Affinity. Yeah, there's lots of strong opinions about that. I'll actually talk more about it in the Q&A. Someone made a comment that I'll reply to in the Q&A section. So there's a site I like called Envato Elements, and they kind of do lots of assets for like designers and stuff. You can search for things called LUTs, so it's lookup tables. And you'll find tons of these things if you go around. I mean, very commonly these are used for videos, but what they are is they're kind of pre-made styles, and a lot of them are based on gradient maps and other types of just adjustments, you know, values and that type of thing. So you can see this example here. I guess this is the default image. Then you add the LUTs, and it kind of makes it a different style. It gives a different feel to it. So if I scroll down, there's other ones. Let's see, Hollywood LUTs. They're very common things to like for people to sell and that type of thing. So yeah, you can see like it does color adjustment, color fixing. So I thought this would be a good opportunity to talk a little bit about that. Probably about 5 or 10 minutes. Mikhail, reading your comments. So you're saying if Affinity creates a video editing software like After Effects or Premiere, they'll grow very quickly. Yeah, I think that could be a thing. It's a tall order to make a really good video editor. I really like DaVinci Resolve. That's what I use. I think they really have a good position in the market. I mean, it's a totally free tool. I say totally. There's a paid version, but the free version does like everything you need. So DaVinci Resolve is one I really like. And CapCut is another one. I've used CapCut a little bit. I wasn't that blown away by it. Maybe it's better on mobile. I used it on desktop. I wasn't that much of a fan of it. I'm mostly going to stick with DaVinci Resolve. But let's see here. So let me show you one LUTs pack I like. So I downloaded this one, and it's kind of like this beach stuff. And you can kind of see it's almost like what we did with the gradient maps. Like you load the LUTs, and it just changes it. So yeah, you like DaVinci Resolve also? Yeah, I like it a lot myself. So you can see it's kind of adding an effect. So I downloaded this ahead of time. Let me apply it to a couple things and show you what it means. Let's see, what's a good sample image? Yeah, I have this beach photo here. And let's do this. It's a big photo. So I'm going to paste this here, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to apply some different LUTs to it that I downloaded. So this will be the original photo here, and I'll zoom in once I apply it. So like I said, the LUTs are an adjustment layer, so you can go to this button down here, Adjustments. So Adjustments. So if you downloaded them, you would go to LUTs, and then you go to Load LUT here. So I'll click this, and I'll browse to it on my computer. I'll just find where I put it here. So I downloaded it ahead of time just because it's a couple hundred megabytes, I believe. But now navigating to it takes a while. Let's go to Livestream. Yeah, so this is the file I downloaded. I unzipped it, so it's this LUTs pack, lookup tables. And the files you want to load are these cube files. So there's a whole bunch of them. So I'll load this one. Let's load the first one. And there we go. So I'll say this is LUT 1. So you can see this is my original image, and this is with the LUT loaded here. And let's try another one. So I'll call this LUT 2. And I'll just double click my adjustment layer again. So I'll go here. I'll load. Oh, let's do, I don't know. Well, let's do the second one. Let's see what it looks like. Open. Close. So here we have kind of another effect. So Michael, reading your question. Yeah, it's a lot of work to make a video editor. Yeah, and sometimes when companies split their focus, it doesn't end up well. So who knows? I would like to see Affinity definitely focus more just on like improving designer and that type of thing in Affinity Photo. Michaela, you're saying that you don't like Adobe's politics because of the worldwide price and the cloud apps. Yeah, yeah. So it's the subscription is something that definitely a lot of people don't like. And let me add one more here. Let's pick some random one. I don't know, 40. LUT 40. So here we have some different, we have the same image and we loaded these lookup table files and we got some different looks here. I think this bottom left one is the most kind of dramatically different. These two ones on the right kind of look kind of similar, but maybe, subtle differences. And if we played with it more, I mean, the pack I downloaded had like 50 of them or something. So we could be here all day, but I just wanted to show you some of these concepts. And I just thought this would be a good video to introduce you to this concept because when I was doing the gradient map stuff, it reminded me of this. So again, the lookup tables, it's a type of file that you can load to give a particular look to your image or video. Now, you can actually export LUTs, but I think in Affinity Photo, it's broken. It doesn't really work all the time for me. You can actually save your adjustment settings as a lookup table and load it back in, but I've seen kind of people online having problems with that also. So yeah, so that was just kind of the topic I wanted to talk about briefly, just for completeness sake. So Teek, you're saying Affinity Animator, that would be very nice. I do think like maybe like an After Effects competitor would be a nice thing. That would be great. Has anyone used that Procreate Dreams app? Is it called Procreate Dreams? That kind of animation one. It looks pretty cool. I just don't know if my iPad again is like 6 years old at this point, so I'm not sure if it could actually run that. It runs Procreate pretty well, but I don't know if it could run that animation one as well. So that's what I had for the gradient maps. Certainly, if you have any questions about that, feel free to ask here or in the comments below. Like I said, I think just play with it a bit, and if you kind of look at take your own black and white image and apply a gradient map to it and just kind of stare at it until you understand like why is the red going where the red's going, why is the green going where the green is going, why is the blue going where the blue's going, and then just know that the red, green, and blue are probably the worst colors to use for this, and that you'd want to do some other colors with some type of adjustment, some type of blend mode. Christine, you said you used it once, just learning. Cool. Yeah, animation is one of my weak areas. I haven't done a lot with it. Chris, someone also had a question about the logo, so feel free to ask that. I don't know what your question exactly was, but if you want to ask the logo question, I can look into that. Teek, you're saying it's okay, but a long way to go still. Yeah. Yeah, I know you do lots of iPad stuff, right, Teek? So I thought maybe, yeah, you'd have some thought on that. So thanks for the feedback. So one question I'll go into in the meantime is I got a question in my email from Amy, and she said, is there an easy way to make a diagonal line pattern like this and to make it seamless? So making the diagonal lines, that's not the hard part. The hard part, of course, is making these things seamless. So I thought I'd do a little demonstration of that. And let me open up my file here. Yeah. So the first thing, so to make a seamless diagonal pattern, what I do is, what I would do, I haven't done it for diagonal lines, but for the other things, what I would do is first, you can create a straight line. I'm just gonna make like a red line pattern just so we can see what's happening here. And let me just go back here. This is kind of the goal of, this is kind of the dream of what we're trying to achieve here. So we're trying to do something like that, right? And I'll make this red. And I'll make it nice and long here. So I'm assuming this is a square. I made this a square, but I'm assuming like those of you guys working out there will be using a square. So what I did is I rotated it 45 degrees. And if you go to the transfer tab, you'll see it's somewhere, my transform, sorry. Yeah, it's 45 degrees. When I select it, you can see it's rotated 45 degrees. So what I did is I turned on my alignment option here, my snapping, and I kind of align it down to this bottom corner here. And then, so I should say that my method here, I'm trying to avoid like math and like numbers, because I know Amy gave me a video, another video that used lots of calculations and things, and she was asking if there's a simpler way to do it. So this way doesn't involve any math or anything like that. It just kind of involves just doing things, putting them in certain positions. So I put the other one here. I take the other one and I put it in the middle. I want to make sure that actually is in the middle. I believe that's in the middle. So now what I did is I'll select these and I'll just rotate it back straight like that. Now what I'll do then is I'll copy these, and I know there's like smarter ways to copy it, but I'll just kind of drag these out over here like this. And just, you kind of make as many as you want, and then you just kind of, it's up to you how dense or how big they want to be. Now I'll select all these, and what I'll do is I'll align them. I'll space them evenly. So if I go to my alignment options up here, if I go to this one here, space horizontally, it'll keep the right and left one in the same position, but it'll space the ones in the middle evenly. So I'll click that, and I'll just like align them vertically, although I don't know if it really matters. Apply. Now if I rotate this 45 degrees again, I'll click off. Now, if fingers crossed I did everything correctly, if I export this and if I export this as a PNG, if I re-import it and do it as a pattern, it should be repeating. So let me do that. File, export, PNG. And this color might hurt your eyes, red on gray. I'm just trying to make a contrast here. Let's do the plaid. I'm just exporting this file. So we always want to test these things when we do them. So let's do a new file. So I just created a rectangle here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to fill it in. So I'm selecting the gradient tool, but the gradient tool actually allows us to, instead of type, we can actually choose a bitmap to fill in here. So I'm going to choose bitmap. I'm going to choose my plaid pattern here. So if I go open, so now if I go here, now it's very, again, it's kind of trippy when you look at it, but if I zoom in, it's basically a seamless pattern here. So I'm not seeing any seam or anything like that. So that's really kind of the foundation of this technique. And then if you want, going on, you should be able to change the color of these guys, the stroke width. It should still work if you do this. I think it would still work if you do the sizing like that. But that's really the foundation of what I would do. The key is really this first step of making your lines like that, rotating it 45 degrees. And then you want to make sure you align it with that corner, align with this corner over here. Make sure you're actually there. And you want to get it in the center. Make sure it's actually in the center, not with these other ones. And then rotate it. And then you're just going to do the clone like this. You can make it as dense as you want. It should work either way. And then you're going to space them horizontally and rotate back 45 degrees. And you have to make sure you're going off the edge, of course. So like that. So that's how you do this type of pattern, that type of pattern. So Amy, hopefully that helped answer your question. I know it was part of a bigger design, but my interpretation of your question is that was the key thing you were asking about. So let's move on to other questions here. So yeah, this is kind of getting onto the AI topic here. I got this comment. Someone said this user, kind of an anonymous user, they hadn't heard of Affinity till a few days ago, and they're tired of paying for Photoshop. But they said that the neural filters in Photoshop put it so far ahead that it's hard to switch to other products like Affinity. And I agree. So they said they read that Affinity has no plans to ever integrate or support AI, which is really dumb in their opinion. So I kind of agree, and in fact, like the colorization option in Affinity in Photoshop is like a one-click thing. I mean, it just works. And a couple months ago, kind of when there was the height of the controversy of the generative AI and all that kind of stuff, Affinity said they weren't going to support that, and they never were. But then I think within the last week or so, during that Canva conference, they said they were looking into ML stuff, which is machine learning. So I think they're avoiding this word AI, but they're saying they're looking into machine learning things. And I think it's just reality that they really should look into some of these types of things, because even without the generative stuff, there's just basic features that people really want, like generative fill, like where you kind of expand the background of your image, is a really popular Photoshop thing. Vector tracing is something that could really benefit from AI, And again, these neural filters, I haven't used many, but I've seen some of them in Photoshop. I mean, they're pretty amazing, like what they can do. So I definitely think Affinity permanently swearing off of AI, I think, is a bad idea. I think maybe they made that, in my opinion, maybe they made that statement a little bit hasty. I think it's just going to be a reality that they're going to need to add some of these features in the future, especially given that Canva does a lot of AI stuff. And, I think you're going to see that get, this is my purely speculation, but I think Affinity just has to add those features to be competitive. So, yeah. If you're reading your comment, so you're just wondering, how do I feel about the latest Adobe terms of use updates? Does it affect my line of work? Like, would I consider ditching Adobe? I can tell you what's very funny about that is that, like, whenever Adobe does something dumb, I get a spike in my videos, and I get a spike in comments of people saying, I've been using Adobe and I just started looking into Affinity, found your videos, that type of thing. So I like it when Adobe does dumb things. It helps my videos get views. But yeah, I don't know a lot about like what they specifically said. I saw there was controversy, and then I saw they said they were going to clarify, and I didn't see the clarification. But yeah, and this combined with like Instagram's thing recently, and where they said they're going to, I guess, use your work for training purposes or something like that, and you had a huge amount of people going to this Kara platform, which I haven't really used, but I know a lot of artists are going to that. They're going to Kara these days. I know Kara's had some load issues because so many people are just using it now. It's really hard to make an app like Instagram stable, and work in real time. Like uploading a photo and then people can see it like instantly everywhere is no trivial task when you have like millions and millions of users. So we'll see how Kara works out. I haven't used it yet, but the recommendation I would say is, like, if you're maybe just go onto Kara and get your username there. Like if you have a username or a brand name for yourself that you really want to protect, just maybe create a Kara account, and you don't have to do anything with it, but just grab the name all you can. So if you're reading your comment, yeah. So you're saying, yeah, that's Europe is kind of spared for now. Yeah, Europe has kind of more strict privacy rules and all that kind of stuff than the US. Kind of goes both ways, Sometimes I think Europe does get a little overzealous with that type of stuff, but it's different, I guess. I guess different priorities over there for privacy and all that kind of thing than in the US. The US is more just like the Wild West. You can do whatever you want for the more compared to Europe in some ways. So we'll see. I mean, Adobe had a huge earnings report right a couple days ago, so I guess in the long run it's not hurting them too much. They had a big bump in their stock after their report, is from what I saw. So yeah. So I got this question also, does anyone notice the search function for help is gone in Affinity 2.5.2? Yeah, it seems like that's the case. There used to be some type of search option here, and now it's gone. And I was looking online, it seems like I posted this link here. It seems like on the forums people are complaining about it also. There's people posting like, why is the search missing? And yeah, so it's just it seems like it's an issue. It's a known issue. And if I go to the bottom, it's I guess, I don't know, it goes for 4 pages, so I won't show you the whole thing here. But yeah, it seems to be a thing that people are talking about, so maybe it's going to be fixed. The help menu search bar will be present in next release 2.5.3. Okay, so maybe something to look forward to in the next point release. So hopefully it'll be fixed soon. Hi, DJR. Thanks for joining. So I got this question about the Liquify persona, and from Arail, and he was asking, is there any way to do the opposite direction for things like twirl and all that? His understanding is that pressing Alt would merely undo the twirl slowly. Yeah, Alt is actually, it is the opposite direction for things. Let me bring up a photo. I don't know, just some kind of random photo. Oh, he's trying to find some type of photo. All right, let's use this one. So this is an Affinity Photo thing. DJR, thanks for the compliment. Appreciate it. I'm happy that tutorials are useful. So I'll go to the live filter for Liquify. So if you want to know how Liquify works, that is, I released last week's live stream was on that, and then I'm editing a video version of it. So the video version will be mostly the same thing in the live stream, but it'll be just, you know, a little more organized. So this is the swirl feature here. So technically, if I press this button, it's swirling. Now, if I hold Alt and press in the same place, it's reversing it, which is the same as kind of undoing, as long as you don't move your mouse button. So this is going in the, so this is basically undoing the swirl there. But if I hold Alt in a different place, so if I hold Alt there, it swirls to the left. If I click normally over here, it swirls to the right. So yeah, Alt is the way of kind of going in the other direction for most of these things. The same thing with the pinch and the punch tool. So the pinch tool by default makes things bigger. So if I zoom in, that's making it bigger. It's kind of subtle, but you can see it. If I hold Alt, it makes it smaller. And the punch one is just the exact opposite. By default, punch is going to make something smaller. But if I hold Alt, it makes it bigger. Now, one thing I'll just say is talking about repair. There's another way to like repair things. So if you get kind of a mess here, let me change the color of this because it's kind of, the grid is hard to see, blue on blue. So there is a repair function, and that is this one here, reconstruct. So the key to the whole Liquify tool is you're modifying this grid here. So you can see the grid is what's getting bent around. So if you actually do want to kind of undo this and reconstruct it, you can choose the reconstruct tool. And as you paint with the reconstruct tool, it looks a little strange, but if you look at the kind of bent area, as I paint over it, that part is becoming straight again. Okay. So I'm fixing it and making it straight. So if I want to reconstruct, I just paint over the whole thing. And now it's going back to normal. So the key is to see, like, now I have the nice square grid here. So there's a little bit of distortion there. If I paint over it, it's fixed with the reconstruct tool. So that's what I'll say about the Liquify options there. So yeah, so Alt will go in the opposite direction, which is kind of the same as undoing initially, as long as you don't like move your mouse. But if you've moved your mouse, you want to use the reconstruct tool to fix something. So I got this question about the loading Procreate brushes in Affinity, and they said, is there a similar way to load color palettes from Procreate in Affinity? Not exactly, but whenever I see a palette online and I like, it's probably the easiest way is to just take a screenshot of it and bring it in. Like, I don't know if people have like patented colors or anything, but I just get a screenshot of it. Like, let me show you something. I'll show you something here. Yeah. So, you know, this is Creative Fabrica, and if I search for Procreate palettes, I mean, you'll see all these things, right? Like all these different color palettes, and I'll just click on it here. And I mean, literally what I just do is I just take like a screenshot, which is like Windows Shift S. I'm just like, you can just like grab it. And then, you know, if you're in a documents here, if I want to create a new palette, just paste it. And then you can just go to your swatches here. I can create a new palette. Let's call it test palette. And I mean, you can just like pick the color you want. So I selected, so if I want to select this color here, I don't know, select this one. Then I can just say add current fill to palette. So I've made that one. Select another one, add the fill, and you can just grab the ones you want, and that's how you can make a palette. So it's a little manual but you know, it's possible. You can also go to you can also make a palette from the document. So if I create palette from document, what's going to do is it's going to take all the different colors and make a palette here. So I can do just as document palette. That'll just make it local for this file. So when I click that button, it just grabbed all the colors from my bitmap here and made it. Now it didn't, it's kind of hard to see like which are the exact ones that it made over here. So that's a little bit of a problem, but you know, that's another way of doing it. But the main way I would do it is just grab them and just like do that. So that's what I recommend for loading a palette in. So Teak, you're saying you never understood why these live filters are not in Designer. Yeah, I don't really know why either. I think sometimes it's kind of arbitrary what features are in one versus the other. You know, there's lots of stuff that could very easily be in both. I think there's just you know, from a product marketing perspective, they have to divvy up these features in a certain way, you know, to kind of, I guess, make each one unique. I mean, I think the dirty secret is like, it could literally be just one big program, you know? I mean, I don't see why it couldn't be, but they want to have, you know, their vector version, and then their kind of photo editing version, and then their desktop publishing version. Like that's how they're trying to position themselves to compete with the Adobe products. So they have it as 3 separate things, I guess, to make it more clear what each one does. But yeah, there's lots of features that could just be supported in all of them. Okay, next question. Oh yeah, so I got this question a couple times. So a lot of times when I work in Affinity Designer, I'll put stuff outside of the canvas. And he's saying when he uses the / key to work outside, it's not working. Yeah, so what happens is, let's say I'm in Designer here. So I can make stuff outside of my image. There we go. So I hit / and you can see things outside of my canvas here. So I can do all sorts of stuff out here. So I can put things outside. So if I hit the / key, it toggles it on and off. Now the problem is when you create like an artboard. So if I have an artboard here, so I'll select an artboard. I'll do that. And what happens is sometimes this doesn't actually show up. Let me delete this. Actually, so what will happen is if these shapes are outside the artboard now, but if I put them inside the artboard in terms of the layer stack, you won't see them anymore, even when I hit the / key. Okay, so when you have artboards, the thing inside them, you're not going to see it when it's in the margin. Okay, but if you drag it outside of the artboard, you will see it. So it's a little confusing. Typically, I don't use, if I'm just using one artboard, I'll just delete the artboard and just like use my canvas by itself. But yeah, if you're having trouble seeing stuff outside the canvas, probably it's because you're using an artboard and the things, they're in the artboard in terms of the layer stack, like this. That will make it so they're not visible here. But if you want them to be visible here, you drag them outside like that. So it's kind of confusing, but that's the way it's implemented. So hope that answered that question. This is the last question? Okay, so we end on a kind of technical question. So this is based on the frequency separation video and live stream I did recently. And I won't go into the super details of it because it's kind of like a lot of background information, but I talk about that in the live stream and the video. So I recommend, if this is the topic you're interested in, watching those videos. But for those who are familiar with it, the question I got here is, he says there's a high pass filter in Affinity Photo, and he says he guesses the same as the high pass part in frequency separation, which is true. Yes, that's correct. What would be the low pass filter, just the unsharp mask? So the low pass filter is going to be a blur filter. So let me show you guys an example here. So again, we talked about this a couple weeks ago. I recommend watching those videos if it's unclear, but we don't have time to go into everything, but I do want to just cover this last topic here. Once again, let me find a good photo, just some person. It's kind of a good example. Let's do this, copy image. All right, let's do this. So when we talked about the frequency separation, what we were talking about when we talk about frequency separation, we have the high frequency part of our image and the low frequency part of our image. And the high frequency part of our image is going to be the edges and the details. And low frequency is going to be these big open areas with things that aren't really happening. So what we can do is we can actually do the frequency separation here. And again, I won't go crazy in details here, but you can see what we're doing. If I increase this, on the left we have edge detection, and on the right we have a low pass filter, which is kind of just blurring things. So I'll click apply. And the combination of our high frequency plus our low frequency results are the original image. So this does look the same, but if we look at them individually, you will see this is my high frequency filter, and this is the low frequency one. Now, and the key thing about the high frequency one is that it has the linear light blend mode. So let me undo this for a second. So we have this frequency separation tool here. So it's frequency separation, but we can actually manually do it ourselves. And this is kind of what the question was getting at here. He says there's this high pass filter. So if I want to manually create it, I need a low pass filter, right? So the answer is yes. It's not the unsharp mask though. I'll show you what it could be. So what I can do is here, let me duplicate this, and let's call this bar high pass. So to add a high pass filter to it, you can go to your live filters, and you can say, somewhere there's a high pass. I haven't looked at this recently. Here we go, high pass, yeah. So high pass filter, and I'm going to increase the radius, and what this is going to do is it's going to let edges pass through. So the bigger we make it, the more edges we get passed through. So let's do like 5. Yeah, I think 5 is good. So I'll click OK. So I'll click X. Now the trick is that we can manually create a low pass filter. So I'm gonna call this here low pass. And the complement of the low pass filter is a Gaussian filter. So I'll go here to the live filters, and it's the Gaussian blur filter. So if I actually blur this by 5 pixels, this is actually the low pass filter. So now if I go back to my high pass, if I make this to linear light, you will see that this is actually our original image. And this is exactly what the frequency separation is doing. So the key to kind of manually making a high pass and low pass filter is to have the high pass filter set it to how many pixels you want, and then do a Gaussian blur and set it to the same number of pixels. And then you'll get your original image here. And make sure for the high pass filter, you actually set it to linear light. So to answer your question, the low pass filter, Gaussian blur basically seems to be the low pass filter for Affinity Photo. So in the video I explain like why you'd want to do these things, but the main reason is like you can actually edit details in the high pass filter that you want to remove, and it's a good way of doing that. So it's kind of a photo editing technique. So let's see. Reading your question, Grappy Hook. Is there any option to arrange the artboards like Adobe Illustrator? Yeah, you can arrange them. I think you have to manually do it though. There's not the option to kind of like put them in a grid or something like that. But yeah, I can drag my artboards around. I can make new ones. I can like put them where I want. I can rename them, you know, test 1, test 2. I can hold Alt and I can copy them, so I can drag. It creates a new one. So yep, I can do all sorts of things like that. I don't know if there's a way to make them like automatically form a grid, but yeah. Segmentary is saying you want to use macros in Affinity Designer. Yeah, that would be cool too. I haven't done much with macros. I should look more into that. But okay, yeah, I would say yeah, go on their forums and ask them for that if that's a feature you want to see. That gets their attention, I find. So that was the last question I had for today. So yeah, we talked about gradient maps today and also did some other kind of questions and answered based on various topics. And like I said, next week, probably the topic, I think it will most likely be a basic introduction to Affinity Designer from the perspective of Canva users. So I'm going to make lots of analogies between how Affinity Designer does things versus how Canva does things, just to help people get up to speed. Because I know a lot of people are kind of looking at Designer these days, and maybe they use Canva or something, and they kind of want some guidance on how to transition to some other more advanced tool like Affinity Designer. So yeah, that's basically all I have for today. I'll give you guys another couple minutes or so if you have any questions. Of course, if you have any questions, you can feel free to leave a comment on the video. And if you want to email me something, you can access the About section of my YouTube channel, and there's like a checkbox you can click to get my email if you want to contact me there. And I'll answer the question online, hopefully if I can answer it. So DJR, you're saying, where can you post questions about Affinity Photo for the next stream? Yeah, like I said, usually I post a community note for announcing the next stream. So that's a good place to post it. So if you ask a question on that community post I make for the next stream, that would be a good place. Probably I'll make that post like Tuesday or Wednesday is usually when I post it. I might make it earlier this week because I want more people to see it so they can plan for it. And if you're reading your comments, you're saying you can adjust the artboards like objects, forms by marking them with the artboard tool and hitting enter. Yeah, so you can resize them and things like that. Yeah, that's also an option. So thanks AIH also for watching. So that's all I have for today. Thanks guys for watching, and hope to see you next week, and enjoy the rest of your week. So talk to you later. Bye.